In January of 2024, a 52-year-old man would vanish after leaving his small-town Ontario home, only for him to be found dead months later, with thousands of dollars of cash on him. Despite the strange circumstances, his death would not be ruled as suspicious. And over a year later, his family is still left with endless questions.
We just want to bring him home, please.
Still no answers.
9 years ago today.
What happened to these two young children?
Remains a mystery.
Urgent story unfolding right now. Who is missing? An unsolved murder.
52-year-old Mathew Edward McGrath was born on April 26th of 1971 to his unnamed 20-year-old birth mother, who is described as medium height, small-boned, fair complexion, green eyes, and had reddish blonde hair. His biological mother worked in the armed forces at age 18 and loved sports. She was an avid reader and loved to dance. Her family was very musically talented as well. Mathew's biological father was described as American and was an oceanographic researcher. He was said to be 6 feet tall, with a slim build, blonde hair and blue eyes, as well as a fair complexion. He liked hunting, cooking, sports, and reading. As a newborn, Mathew would be adopted into the loving home of Jim and Susan McGrath, who would eventually give him a little sister named Melissa. Mathew is remembered as a well-loved, gentle soul, a free spirit, and a lover of all kinds of music and sports. He was said to be the biggest Montreal Canadiens fan. He was someone who enjoyed the outdoors, spending his summers golfing and fishing. He was also a voracious reader and loved to banter about politics and the world news. He was also a smiling face to the patrons at the waterfront gastropub where he worked, and lived in Carleton Place, Ontario, a town of around 12,500 residents, about 55 kilometers west of downtown Ottawa. Before Mathew's disappearance, it's claimed by family that he was dating a girl named Jessica, whose ex-boyfriend had drowned a couple of years prior. Now, there is actually a lot of information regarding Jessica, her mother Angela, as well as her half-brother Bruno, and then we also have Mathew's boss Mark. All 4 of these individuals have been heavily speculated on social media by family and by those following Mathew's case. Now, I'm not going to dive into that information too deeply. There's a lot of information about their movements prior to Mathew's disappearance, as well as after his disappearance. There's a lot of details about them. There's also a lot of motives that are mentioned. And despite that information being very interesting, I'm not going to really dive into that information in this video because there is no proof regarding these claims, and I think it would just be irresponsible of me to spend this video talking about these claims. However, I will say, if what the family is claiming is true, and if this information that's being presented is all fact, it's very disturbing, and that would mean that Mathew is most likely not surrounding himself with the best individuals in this town. Between November 17th to 26th of 2023, Mathew traveled to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic alone, a place he had visited before. He was known to be staying at the Princess All Suites Resort. Now, it's not fully known what happened during this trip, and his sister is asking if you remember seeing Mathew during this trip, during those dates, if you interacted with him, if you have any photos that you took during that time period in Punta Cana that may have Mathew in the background. Maybe you spoke to him at one of the bars. Please come forward so that they can continue to piece this timeline together, because it is pretty much unknown why he went to Punta Cana alone and what he did while he was there. They are still trying to piece that timeline together. However, from what we do know, it sounds like Mathew left Punta Cana in a hurry. He didn't officially check out of the hotel room, and he left his luggage behind. He brought his passport, but left his Canadian health card behind. Mathew was also an avid reader, and he left his books still sitting on the bedside table untouched. However, he did catch his scheduled flight out of the Dominican, only wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, and only carrying his passport and his phone. It's also noted that the carry-on bag that he took on the trip he had borrowed from someone. And family would later be able to retrieve these items from the Dominican, and they still have them in their possession now. Based on a text message exchange between Mathew and a friend, it sounds as if he hurt his back during the last couple of days that he was in the Dominican. It is noted that he did have an existing back injury that he actually had previous surgery on. So it's unknown if this was a flare-up, if he had re-injured it, or if he was just making this back injury up. After returning to Canada, he did go to the hospital numerous times to obtain doctor's notes, and these doctor's notes were to get time off of work. because once he returned from the Dominican, he didn't return to work. And the last doctor's note that he obtained only gave him time off work until January 7th. Around January 3rd and 4th of 2024, Mathew would withdraw $4,500 from his bank account. It's unknown why he would do this, and it's unknown why he would hold on to this cash for the next couple of weeks. After January 7th, it seems as if he didn't go and obtain any more doctor's notes, but he also didn't return to work. Because in original releases, it stated that around 10:30 p.m. on January 17th of 2024, Mathew was last seen around his Carlton Place residence, located near the intersection of Grant and Coleman Streets. However, that date would change when a neighbor would come forward stating that they had seen Mathew the following day on January 18th, between 3:30 p.m. and 4 p.m., leaving his residence on foot, again near the intersection of Grant and Coleman Streets. He was described as being dressed in blue jeans, a brown leather jacket, and black running shoes. Not a typical outfit for January in Ontario. This neighbor was also noted to be very kind to Mathew. They often offered him a ride to the laundromat or a ride to work, and she often saw him outside walking his dog. The last time Mathew was spotted, he did not have his cell phone or his wallet on him, and he wouldn't be reported missing until 2 days later on January 20th. And for months, Melissa would search for her missing brother. When a psychic would give her a location, her and a family friend would walk the 9th line to the 10th line in Beckwith, sometimes in waist-deep snow. They spent hours walking area trails in the water's edge. The family friend would also travel to nearby municipalities, putting up missing persons posters, and another friend who lives in Lanark would drive around the area searching for Mathew. On February 7th, Melissa's husband would have 1,000 cards printed from where he was working in New York City, bearing the words, "missing," in addition to Mathew's name, picture, and information. There was noted to be around 8,000 mailboxes in the area. However, they printed only 1,000 cards because it was very costly and they wanted to start somewhere. And their goal was to distribute these cards and put them in the mailboxes of people that lived in and around Carlton Place. Melissa writing on Facebook, quote, "Please look closely at his pictures, especially for those in Carlton Place, Perth, Smith Falls, Innisfil, and area. He does not have a cell phone with him, is not dressed for winter, and is suffering from a back injury." End quote. She would also use other forms of social media in an attempt to spread the word on her missing brother.
Good morning, TikTok. I don't normally post a lot on TikTok. I'm not TikTok famous. I'm not an influencer, but I'm reaching out because I need your help. I need TikTok to do their thing. My brother, Mathew McGrath, he goes by Matt, has been missing now for 21 days in the town of Carlton Place, Ontario. We have no new information. He was last seen leaving his apartment in Carlton Place, heading towards downtown. Downtown Carlton Place is a small town. Please keep your eye open. Share my TikToks, stitch my TikToks, duet my TikToks. Tag any influencer you know that has a huge reach. I would never come on here and ask for help unless I'm desperate. My brother is all I have left. Our parents are gone, and it's just him and I. And I need him to come home. I'm begging for your help. I need to know he's safe. I need to know he's okay. I need to get him home. Again, I'm not an influencer. I'm not popular on Facebook. I'm not popular on TikTok, but I need your help. I'm asking anyone and everyone anywhere, especially in Ontario, Canada, to share his picture. He could be anywhere. We don't know the situation on why he left or how he disappeared. He was last seen on foot. He does not drive. This is his missing poster. Please look at his picture.
He's about 5'10", 150 pounds, tall and slim. He's got bushy hair, blondish gray. Normally does not wear a ball cap. He loves the Montreal Canadiens. He's a big sports fan. He may have injured his back, so may not be walking correctly. He's a smoker. We don't know if he has money on him. He's wearing a leather coat that's brown, jeans, and black sneakers. I'm asking the TikTok world and Facebook world to please share, no matter where you are in Canada or the country. I just want him home, safe and sound. If you spot him anywhere or have any information, please call the Ontario Provincial Police at 1-888-310-1122. Again, my brother's name is Mathew McGrath. He goes by Matt or Maddie. He's 52. We just want to bring him home, please.
On January 21st, Carleton Place Fire Chief would post on X, writing, quote, "Have you seen Mathew? He often walks across the fire hall parking lot with a little dog." End quote. What's interesting to note is that this fire station is located at 15 Coleman Street, which is also where the Carleton Place detachment of the OPP is headquartered, directly across the street from where Mathew was last seen alive. 4 months later, around 5 p.m. on May 12th, human remains would be pulled from the Mississippi River, which flowed through the center of town. The remains were specifically found near the end of Oakland Crescent, about 4 kilometers from where Mathew was last seen alive. As you can see, this location of the river is backed by homes on one side and fields and forests on the other. The remains would be transferred to Ottawa for an autopsy and would eventually be identified as Mathew's. And according to this autopsy, no signs of foul play were found, and they determined that he had been in the water since he disappeared. His cause of death was noted to be drowning, yet his manner of death was undetermined. And on his body was reported to be $4,000 of cash. His bank account was also empty. Despite this strange fact, foul play was not suspected, and no further information would be coming from police. After this, his sister Melissa would spend the last year fighting for answers for her brother. She took to the internet to create a Facebook page, citing that the grief and shock of losing her only brother has been compounded by the lack of answers surrounding his disappearance and death. Melissa writing, quote, "Mathew's story is not finished, and I will continue to search for answers. He would not throw himself in the river. If he is in the river, somebody put him in there, or he accidentally fell in. None of us who are close to Mathew believe he would have taken his own life. Something is not quite right. With few solid answers, so many scenarios go through my head. I can only speculate, but we do believe something happened in the Dominican Republic." End quote. It's also brought up that the Dominican is a place that Mathew's boss also frequented, and that he possibly also went to with his boss previously. Melissa also believes that Mathew would have never left the family dog Mo alone home to starve and, urinate and defecate all over the house. He absolutely adored Mo because Mo was actually their mother's dog, and he had been given Mo to take care of after their mother had to move into a long-term care facility. And when she eventually passed away in 2020, he took her death extremely hard. Melissa says that her brother would not have left Mo alone at home like that. He loved that dog. Mathew's cell phone, along with his wallet, would be handed back over to Melissa by the OPP. On Saturday, January 18th of 2025, Melissa would gather with friends and volunteers to hand out flyers, raising awareness about her brother's disappearance and death, and to keep him in the public eye. The flyers also aimed to seek information about his disappearance and death. Melissa would also put in a FOIA request for information on her brother's case. However, from what she has said, she only received 1 day worth of notes from the day that his body was found. Nothing from the previous investigation into his disappearance. She did note, however, that it's possible that those are 2 separate investigations, so the information she got was from his death investigation and not his disappearance, and she wants all of it, yet she wasn't given that. So let's talk a little more about the strange facts in this case. If we want to look at this as an accident, since Mathew allegedly had this back injury, I guess some way, somehow I could see him accidentally falling into the river and then not being able to get out. This is a big river. We have to keep that in mind. I don't know if you've ever had an injured back before, but if you have, that sounds absolutely terrifying if you were to accidentally fall somewhere and then not be able to get out due to your injury. So I think it could be possible that someone who is injured could accidentally fall somewhere like that and then eventually die due to the elements or due to drowning. But when you look at the map of the town, his home wasn't near the river. So he would have had to walk or travel a little bit of a distance to the other side of town to even get near the river. And would someone do that with a back injury unless he was driven to that area? On top of that, he left the home not wearing winter clothes. He also didn't have his wallet or his cell phone on him. Yet it would be assumed he did have the $4,000 of cash on him. So where could he have been heading? Unless that cash was stored somewhere else and he went to get the cash in that location, but who keeps $4,000 of cash on them in general, let alone in a different location other than where they're staying? It's all very curious. And where was he just heading in general when he left the house? What was meant to be his destination? Was he going to meet with someone? Did he have somewhere in mind? Was he just going for a casual walk? And if he was going somewhere and he was attacked by someone, why would they leave the $4,000 of cash on his body? Why wouldn't someone just take a large amount of money like that if it was, say, a robbery, for instance? And then we have to consider the idea of unaliving. If he was going to unalive himself, why wasn't there a note left? Why wouldn't he have made arrangements for his dog so that the dog didn't starve and be left in that kind of state for those amounts of days until the dog was found? His sister also noted that he was a strong swimmer, and she believes that if he was to take his own life, it wouldn't have been by drowning. But again, we do have to factor in that back injury. If he did have a back injury, because there is speculation whether or not he was just lying about the back injury, but if he did have it, how bad was it still months later after it initially happened? Would that impact his ability to swim if he did accidentally fall in the water? But let's also talk about the rarity of unalivings by drowning. Now, the conversation of someone unaliving themselves is a very heavy topic, and obviously there are many different methods to do so, but I think that's something important to talk about here. Drowning isn't a quick, easy death, and when we hear stories about people unaliving themselves, it's more so either by asphyxiation or a weapon involved. Because when it comes to drowning, it's extremely painful, and your body will fight to get air. So unless you use something to tie yourself down in the water, it's not easy to just lay there and allow yourself to drown. And I'm sure there are scenarios where it has happened. And I actually did a little bit of research into this because I was curious. And according to the National Library of Medicine, quote, drowning as a method of unaliving is known to occur, but has primarily been described in environments with readily available access to water, such as a coastal region. In this study, we described and analyzed a series of unaliving drownings occurring in a non-coastal area of Texas. Between 1977 and 1996, 52 cases of unaliving drownings were investigated at the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Science in Dallas, Texas. Such deaths accounted for only 0.85% of all unalivings and 4% of all drowning deaths. In contrast, unaliving drownings reportedly account for 2.8 to 8.9% of all unalivings in regions with easy access to water. As with other studies of unaliving drownings, the victims are usually sober white males over the age of 40 years. Our results also confirm that certain individuals who unalive by drowning use weights to facilitate the process. End quote. So Mathew does meet some of the criteria that is discussed there. However, they do note that weights are normally used because, again, how else are you going to hold yourself under the water? And there seems to be no weights regarding his autopsy. Another strange thing is that no one has come forward claiming to have seen Mathew walking through town that day. Again, this is not a very large town. This is one of those kind of places where everyone knows everyone. So why are there no other witness sightings other than outside of his apartment? It's strange to me because, again, the river isn't very close to his apartment, as you can see on the map here. He would have had to walk a decent distance to get there. So you'd think that there would have been some other person to have spotted him. There would have been some kind of surveillance footage of him walking through town. Yet we don't seem to even have that. So again, that makes me wonder, could he have been picked up by someone and driven somewhere? And if so, why hasn't that person come forward? According to Melissa, her brother's death was never properly investigated to begin with. From her knowledge, the crime scene was never held, evidence was not collected, and those who live on Oakland Crescent near where his body was found were not questioned. Yet according to an article in the Toronto Star where they interviewed an OPP officer done in 2021, it reads, quote, in cases of sudden death, police must first treat the incident as a homicide. for investigative and crime scene purposes. Many officers are needed to secure the scene and to set up a perimeter, interview possible witnesses, perhaps conduct traffic control or block off streets, go door to door to perform a number of other roles or activities. There might also be specialized units such as the OPP Forensic Identification Unit and Plainclothes Crime Unit members. While this is happening, officers are locating and notifying next of kin. The coroner will also attend to pronounce a death and to help determine a cause. Once the cause of death has been determined, then the scene is released by police. The OPP issues media releases only for suspicious or accidental deaths. Unalivings or medical or natural deaths are not commented on. The typical response to any media inquiries about these incidents would be referred to as sudden death and no foul play suspected. End quote. It's also noted by Melissa that she was not the first one notified when Matthew's body was found, and that's something that's very upsetting. On top of that, in the report that she did receive from the FOIA request, it's extremely vague. As you can see from the document, it states that with the assistance of fire, the body was removed from the river and brought back to shore. The deceased was in an advanced state of decomposition. It was not identifiable. The deceased was wearing a brown leather-style coat zipped up to the neck with underwear and a sock on the left foot. There was no obvious signs of trauma visible on the body. After examining the coat pockets, a large sum of Canadian currency was located. No identification was located. The coroner attended the scene and examined the body, and clothing was documented in an attempt to aid in the identification process. The currency was seized from the deceased's pockets and was turned over to another constable. But in the bottom of the information she received from the FOIA request, it states that, quote, "The death was believed to be the result of an unaliving pending autopsy findings," end quote. However, there should never be an assumption of the cause of death before an autopsy is performed. So why was his death immediately looked at as an unaliving or just an accident? When the correct procedure is that they're meant to look at every death investigation as suspicious and as a potential crime scene until proven otherwise, meaning gathering evidence, preserving the scene, and allowing for a thorough investigation before assuming the manner of death. And what's interesting when you think about that and look at another recent case of a very similar situation happening in the local area, it makes you begin to wonder, what is going on here? 63-year-old Robert Prevost of Clarence, Rockland, which is located about an hour and a half from Carleton Place, will go missing from his home on Laurier Street in early February of 2025, but he wasn't reported missing until March. His case also had little to no information regarding his disappearance. His body would end up being discovered in the Ottawa River just 2 months later in May. Yet in his case, the coroner ruled his death a homicide. Now, I want to just assume from that there probably is some very obvious indicator that this was a homicide in his case. There was some conclusion made very early on that this was a murder. But unfortunately, since in Canada they like to keep that kind of information locked down very tightly, we don't know. We might not ever know why they ruled Robert's case a homicide right off the bat. But why in Robert's case was that looked at as a possibility, but not in Matthew's? Melissa is still holding on to her brother's belongings as a memory to keep fighting. She even has his toiletries from his last trip still in the Ziploc bag. She went to the location his body was found to spread roses for his 54th birthday. She has looked at the crime scene photos, analyzed her brother's bloated body from head to toe. And in doing so, it has only made her more angry that her brother is not getting justice. And there are so many unanswered questions here, such as what happened to that other $500 that Matthew had taken out? Again, he was only found with $4,000 on him. So what happened to the other $500? And why did he take this money out in the first place? Why did he drain his bank accounts? Why did he leave his home without winter clothing on? Was he only intending to go out for a short period of time or only a short distance away? And if that's the case, how did he end up across town in the river? What were his plans that evening? Was he going to meet someone? Did he owe someone money? Is that why he took all of this cash out? And if so, who could that individual be? Why didn't they come forward? And if he was murdered, why was the cash left on him? If this was all an accident, why was he walking around town with $4,000 cash on him, across town with an alleged back injury in order to fall into this river? And no one's seen him, there's no surveillance footage known, and I'm sure there are so many more questions other than just that. Why did he go to the Dominican Republic alone, and why did he hurry and leave his belongings there? Matthew is described as standing 5'11" tall, with blonde hair and blue eyes. During his disappearance, he was wearing a brown leather jacket, blue jeans, and black running shoes, the same outfit he was found wearing in the river. If you have any information regarding Mathew's death, please contact the authorities. If you remember seeing him, again, if you were even in the Dominican Republic during the time he was there and you have information as to what he was doing there, please reach out. His sister has a Facebook page. She has an email that you can contact her at, and please only contact her if you actually have credible information. Do not spam her with information she doesn't need. I will have all that information to contact the individuals needed down below in the description, and please go show support on the Facebook page. Melissa has spent the last year of her life trying to get answers for her brother. If this was just an accident, it's extremely unfortunate. However, there are just so many strange things and so many details that just make it seem like there may be something else here that is unknown. This doesn't seem as simple as he was going for a walk and accidentally slipped in the water. I truly hope the answers come. And if the rest of you out there could go share out this video, share out any information that Melissa has posted, please help her spread the word on this, because hopefully it'll get to the people that have the answers, that might not even know that they have the information that's needed. And doing so could also put pressure on the police to know that there are still people out there who want answers for Mathew. And if there are suspects out there that know something, it could also put pressure on them. So please do your part as well. Let me know what you think about this case down below. Please be kind to this family. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.